If I'm not deceived, I'm thankful to have the opportunity to speak in the Lord's name yet again, and I'm thankful for the health to do so. Proverbs chapter 12 and verse 3. If it's the Lord's will, I'd like to say a few things and bring out a few points in this that I hope will glorify the Lord. A man shall not be established by wickedness, but the root of the righteous shall not be moved. First, we want to point out the man and his wickedness, and then the righteous and their root. I understand the word established here. One of the meanings of it is to be made solid. So it's the same as saying a man shall not be made solid by wickedness. Now, understand that when we speak of wickedness, I like to think of it as John when he wrote to the elect lady and her children. He just sort of put it all in a nutshell, so to speak, when he said all unrighteousness is sin. But sometimes when we read the word wickedness or words such as iniquities, if we're honest now, we have a tendency to just think upon those outward things that, not saying they're not wicked, but we tend to look upon things such as killing another man or, what we would consider heinous sins. But again, in reality, he says all unrighteousness is sin. Do you know that even includes a bad thought? The old carnal mind is full of bad thoughts. I believe somewhere in Proverbs he says the thought of foolishness is sin. But I say all that just to get down to the point that, in principle, all unrighteousness is sin. But we seldom think about wickedness in terms of what man in his ignorance, and I don't say that in no kind of way as being disparaging towards anybody, but ignorance is real. It just simply means those who don't know. Ignorance means you don't know. Man in his native ignorance. When he endeavors to set before the King of Kings his own works and his own doings, that in itself is iniquity. And I emphasize his own works and his own doings. When he begins to set it forth before the King of Kings and Lord of Lords, as if to justify himself by it, or bring himself into a good or right standing before God, or to show that he is in a good standing before God because of what he's done. I'm telling you, that is iniquity. You see? Matthew chapter 7. Let's go there for just a few minutes and read what our Savior said. Most of us are familiar with this. Start with verse 21. Not everyone that saith unto me, Lord, Lord, shall enter into the kingdom of heaven, but he that doeth the will of my Father which is in heaven. Many will say to me in that day, Lord, Lord, have we not prophesied in thy name? And in thy name have cast out devils? And in thy name, notice every one of these, they begin it by saying, in thy name. Lord, have we not done this? And in thy name done many wonderful works. Now, that's coming from them. Jesus never called it a wonderful work, did he? Right the contrary, right opposite, this is what Jesus said. In verse 23, and then will I profess unto them, I never knew you. Depart from me, ye that work iniquity. Now I'm going to tell y'all something right there. That's a fearful verse. I said, Brother Steve, why is it so fearful? I'm going to tell you why. Because I believe that all the iniquity you could ever imagine is in my flesh. Well, you ought not to think of yourself that way. Well, I'm only saying what the Apostle Paul did. Not that I'm trying to compare myself to an apostle. That ain't what I mean. But I'm talking about in his experience. I can relate to it when he said, I know that in me, that is in my flesh, dwelleth no good thing. Sometimes I confess to you, the Lord has used this verse here in Matthew 7 and brought me to the point. Excuse me for being personal, but sometimes you can't help it. You just got to be personal with it. I hope you know what I'm talking about. I hope the Lord has brought you here as well. He uses this verse here in Matthew 7 and brings me to the point through this verse to make me examine myself. As Paul said, see whether ye be in the faith. Know ye not the Spirit of God dwell in you, except you be reprobates? Because when you're made to see your own inner corruption, you dare not lift your finger and point your finger to someone else in this type of judgment, what I'm talking about. No, because you have been made intimately acquainted with the filth and the corruption of your own heart. As Solomon said, the plague of your own heart. Therefore, we are brought to examine ourselves by the inner working of the Spirit and make the confession, Lord, if I have any righteousness, if there's any goodness within me, it's not of me, it's not by me, it's not through me, but it must be thy righteousness imputed freely by thy grace unto me. You see there? He says unto them, I never knew you. That don't mean that he was ignorant of them. That meant that he didn't know them in that everlasting way of speaking of the covenant of grace. He never knew them. They were never embraced in it. If it's not talking about that, then we must say that Jesus was ignorant of them and always had been, even was ignorant when he was of them when he was speaking to them. Now, I won't have that. I don't believe he was ignorant of that. Ain't what he's talking about here. But he did not embrace them, as it were, as being his sheep. He never knew them. Now then, let's go back to Proverbs 12:3. A man shall not be established. Means made solid. Well, in Matthew 7 there in that example, wasn't that what they were trying to do? They were trying to establish themselves, make themselves solid before the King of Kings. But just as sure as Solomon said it all these years prior, even so it stood, they shall not be established by wickedness. And as we tried to say, that don't always mean going out and killing people and raping and pillaging and all of these things that our minds tend to go to first. It was just as much iniquity for them to say what they did to the Lord as anything else is iniquity and wickedness. So a man shall not be established by wickedness. Now notice how it shifts a little bit. It kind of changes a little bit here. Then he says, but the root of the righteous shall not be moved. Not just the righteous. The attention is on the root of the righteous. Shall not be moved. Now it begs the question, who is the root? Isaiah chapter 53, we find him saying in verse 2, if we can turn to it and see what he says. This is that chapter, we're familiar with it, where he says, who hath believed our report, and to whom is the arm of the Lord revealed? For he shall grow up before him as a tender plant and as a root. There it is, out of dry ground. He hath no form, no comeliness, and when ye shall see him, or we shall see him, there is no beauty that we should desire him. He is despised and rejected of men, a man of sorrows and acquainted with grief, and we hid, as it were, our faces from him. He was despised, and we esteemed him not. Surely, listen at this, he hath borne our griefs and carried our sorrows, yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. I might come back for verses 5 and 6 here in a little bit. So, in other words, I read that primarily to show that even Isaiah, who, by the way, had the Spirit of Christ in him, the Spirit of Christ was in these old prophets of old, signifying, testifying beforehand the sufferings of Christ and the glory that should follow. And that's how Isaiah was prophesying there. That was prophetic language, yes it was, when Jesus would come here in this world. As John himself said, the Word was made flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory as the glory of the only begotten of the Father. Now then, concerning this root, the root, we hear there in the Revelation letter, John there in exile on the Isle of Patmos, and he hears the glorious voice of the Son of God. And you know what he said to him? He said, I am the root and offspring of David, the bright and morning star. So now you talking about a text, the root and offspring of David. Now I just give them two examples to show who the root of the righteous is. And just as sure as a man shall not be established by wickedness, is just as sure that the root of righteousness, notice this, shall not be moved. Now anything, like we said, I think we said this, one definition of established is being made solid. I desire this evening to preach unto you, the listener. He that hath an ear, let him hear, that you have a solid root. And that root is so solid, yes it is, that it cannot be moved. In fact, the full and complete salvation of all his children, out of every kindred, nation, tongue, and people, not just the Jews after the flesh that are his, but all of his, out of every kindred, tribe, people, and tongue. Yes, I want to tell you, all the full, complete salvation is dependent and hinges upon just how solid this root is. Not how solid they are in and of themselves. See, that's them trying to establish themselves. But it depends upon how solid this root is. Let me tell you something. If you can rightly pluck up something by the roots, then it can be moved, can't it? But I want to declare to you about the root, the bright and morning star, the root and offspring of David, Jesus Christ. And yes, this root, it'll run so deep, bless your soul, that it goes all the way back before the world began. And not only so, it runs so deep that it fills up all of time and space. Why, yes it does. It runs through all the ages. Yes it does. Let me tell you, I don't know what the future holds, but I tell you, my Jesus, the root, he's already there. Yes, he is. I don't know how to describe that other than to say, as he said in Isaiah, I believe it's chapter 43, he said, before the day was, I'm he. Yes, that's what he said. And he said, I will work, and who will let it? Oh my goodness, you talking about a solid root. Oh my yes, what a solid root that is. But look, it's all hinging here upon the root. Yes, and may I submit to you, the work of salvation, redemption, reconciliation, justification, sanctification, all of it. I want you to know the responsibility rested solely and completely upon this Jesus who came as a root out of dry ground. Why, that upon him may hang all the glory of his Father's house. Oh, bless your soul in that house right there. He's talking about a family. Yes, of this root the whole family in heaven and earth is named. Why, yes, now, let's see what he says. And the root of the righteous shall not be moved. Now we've established who the root is, but now let's look at who the righteous are. Let's go from Matthew 7 to John chapter 10 and see what it says here. Oh, there's some beautiful things. He says here, and starting with verse 24, if we can. Then came the Jews round about him and said unto him, How long dost thou make us to doubt if thou be the Christ? Tell us plainly. Jesus answered them, I told you, and ye believe not. The works that I do in my Father's name, they bear witness of me. But ye believe not, because you're disobedient sheep. No, sir, that ain't what he said. He says, but ye believe not, because ye are not of my sheep. As I said unto you. See, he done told them that. You're not of my sheep. And he said now in verse 27, My sheep hear my voice, and I know them. Oh, and they follow me. Now notice in Matthew 7, he says, Depart, for I never knew you. Oh, but now with these little sheep, he says, I know them, and they follow me. Oh, and listen at this, and I give unto them eternal life, and they shall never perish. Neither, listen now how it says this, neither shall any man pluck them out of my hand. Now that plucking, you see there, if it can be plucked up, it can be moved. But notice again, Proverbs 12 and 3, the root of the righteous shall not be moved. I'm going to tell you, if Jesus could be moved, you could be moved. But no, notice the union here. You know, he said in another place in that day, talking about when the Comforter comes, ye shall know that I'm in my Father, ye in me, and I in you. Don't you see? Oh, that's just beautiful. But he says, neither shall any man pluck them out of my hand. Cannot be moved. My Father, which gave them me, is greater than all. Oh, no wonder. He said over there in 1 John, I believe it's 3:16. He says this. I believe it's 3:16. Well, no, it's not 3:16, but somewhere in John there he says, Beloved, if our hearts condemn us, notice what he said here. God is greater than our hearts. And knoweth all things. Yes, listen, it's in harmony with what Jesus said here. My Father, which gave them me, is greater than all, and no man is able to pluck them out of my Father's hand. Why? Because he said, I and my Father are one. Now, having said that about the sheep, let's go back to Isaiah 53 and start again with verse 4. Surely, notice that, he hath borne our griefs. This is before he ever done it, but it was as good as done. He's speaking of future things in the past tense. Surely he hath borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet we did esteem him stricken, smitten of God, and afflicted. But he was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised, notice that, for our iniquities. The chastisement of our peace was upon him, and with his stripes we are healed. All we like sheep, there it is, have gone astray. We have turned everyone to his own way. Oh, and here it is, and the Lord hath laid on him the iniquity of us all. That's why I said earlier that Matthew 7 there, knowing my own iniquity, knowing my own sins. And yes, I know that in me, that is in my flesh, dwelleth no good thing. Yes, there, to feel the depths of it sometimes, and then to have a fresh view, a glorious view of our Redeemer, the root to himself and his finished work. Oh, what rejoicing, my goodness, yes, and what great comfort, and what consolation to know that on him was laid the iniquity of us all. Don't you see here what I'm trying to say is this? He that knew no sin, the root, became sin for us, that we might be made the righteousness of God in him. That's the only way that you're established. And like he said in the Hebrew letter, he says, for by one offering he hath forever perfected them that are sanctified. And as an old elder down here years ago used to say, he says, perfect is good enough and forever is long enough. Oh, and I agree with the old brother, but it's all hinging upon the root. The root of the righteous shall not be moved. I want you to know, I let the mountains dissolve, yes, and I let the earth tremble and quake. Yet this root I shall not be moved. What he hath done is forever. None can lay anything to it or take away from it. In other words, what I'm trying to say to you this evening is that salvation is of the Lord. Yes, now let's go over here for just a minute to Titus and to see what he's talking about here, what this root did for us in Titus chapter 2. I'm going to have to bring this to a close after this. I don't want to, but we're going to have to. Titus chapter 2, it says in verse 11, real hurriedly now, let me say, for the grace of God that bringeth salvation hath appeared to all men. That means all types of men, not just Jews. It says, teaching us that denying ungodliness and worldly lust, we should live soberly, righteously and godly in this present world. Listen to this, looking for that blessed hope and the glorious appearing of the great God and our Savior Jesus Christ. Now verse 14, listen how beautiful. Who gave himself for us, that he might redeem us from, here it is, all iniquity. Oh, when I begin, to turn my eyes inward and see I'm on iniquity, I'm think to myself, oh, how can it be? Oh, what manner of love is this? That all of my iniquity, all of my uncleanness, I was laid upon him. And yes, it was. And then the reverse of that, all of his obedience, all of his righteousness, yes, all of his merit that he merited, I want you to know it was imputed to his little ones. Oh, yes, I want you to know that's the sound of free and sovereign grace. And now then, let's see what he said here. He might redeem us from all iniquity and purify unto himself a peculiar people, zealous of good works. Now, the good works that they're zealous of, all the good works of the Lord himself. Why, yes, they know they don't have none of themselves. No, they don't. But grace makes them zealous of it. Why, yes, they dare not boast in their labors. They dare not boast in their doings. No, that's what they did in Matthew 7. But they're made by grace zealous of the good works that which the Father hath before ordained that they should walk in. Just like he said in Isaiah 26. Let me go over there and read it real quick. And the camera's probably going to shut off on me, but that'll be all right. Isaiah chapter 26, he says, thou wilt, verse 12, thou wilt ordain peace for us, for thou also hast wrought all our works in us. But anyway, we're trying to point out again, going to Proverbs 12 and verse 3, a man shall not be established by wickedness, but the root of the righteous shall not be moved. And I want you to know nobody's been able to move or pluck up that root, nor can they move or pluck up. It means the same thing. Those that are in him. Yes, that's a solid root, ain't it? And I'm going to tell you, if we're established, it is because of him and what he's accomplished. Praise be to the living God. Praise be unto him who liveth, who was dead, and is alive forevermore. Yes, we love him because he first loved us, and I love you for Jesus' sake.